This is Optometrists Building Empires, and I'm your host, Ankit Patel. Each week, we'll explore the journey of multi-practice ownership and leadership in optometry. Join us for insights and strategies from the top minds in our field. This show is sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team helps your office increase revenues, reduce costs, and reduce staffing headaches. Let's build your empire together. Today's guest is another great doctor I'm excited to introduce to you. He's an experienced optometrist dedicated to helping fellow eye professionals navigate the complexities of practice ownership and transition. Over the past 18 years, he's practiced in various settings, gaining firsthand knowledge in challenges that come with managing with evolving practices. Now a key member of Practice Consultants, he brings his expertise to help optometrists make informed decisions and ensuring a smoother transition process. He's the owner of Metro Eye, which has 2 locations in Iowa, and president of Practice Consultants. Please welcome Dr. Jeff Neighbors. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you asking me to join you, and looking forward to the conversation about our profession and what it looks like now and what it's going to look like in the future.
Yeah, and you have such a unique perspective because I'm excited to talk to you about, you see it from both sides, right? From the doctor side, from multiple locations, and from the sales side. And so let me ask you, what's been the most important thing that helped you grow your empire with the practices as well as your brokers and consulting business?
Sure. And it is, I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and a lot of my predecessors on this topic say the same thing I do. Empire sounds like such a glorious word, right? It sounds flowery, and it makes it feel like, oh, wow, this is a great big deal. And it is important, but as an empire, I think the biggest thing is that heart of service and listening to the patients and what they need. Most of us got into the profession because we want to provide care. We want to take care of our patients. We want to make sure that they have the things they need, whatever that falls into, and whatever version of practice looks like for you. So when you do that and you do it with that heart of service, it makes a big difference in how your practice grows, how your patients see you. And it really translates into growth. Now, does that mean exponential growth and numbers and everything else? No, but little bits at a time, that service to your patients is what shines through. And that's really what matters to them in the long run.
Okay. Yeah. And let's dig into that a little bit more. Can you share with me a story that kind of highlights that best for you? Like something visceral that you're like, yeah, this is where that made a difference.
Well, and I think it goes to the conversation about, empires and multiple practice ownership. And through my profession, there's been plenty of times when that's grown and that's shrunk. I've had single locations, I've had multiple locations. I'm to the 2 locations now, and that fits me really well. And through that, I think the one thing that always is amazing to me and very humbling to me is when you see a patient and you move into a different location, or you move somewhere else. I've moved across the state. I've moved, several different places, and you have those patients that find you. They follow you because of the care you provide, because of that conversation you had with them about how their mom had macular degeneration and how they're worried about this, but the way that you talked them through it made them feel better about their eyes, about their healthcare. Those are the connections that really speak to why patients keep coming back to doctors that take good care of them. And I'm not the only one. I know that by and large, optometry is very, very good at listening to their patients to make sure that they're giving them the care that they need. But those interactions, those one-on-one with those patients, is the thing that gives you the energy to get through the 20 patients a day, the 25 patients a day that you have to do from a business standpoint. But it really brings you back to that center of, why did I decide that this was the profession for me? What made me want to be an optometrist since the time I was 2 or 3 years old? For whatever reason, that care that I received as a little kid translates to how I take care of my patients now and keep that cycle going.
Gotcha. Okay. So what is it that, you talked a little bit about it, right? You said you were at more locations, 1 location.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that journey a little bit. That sounds interesting. Like what has your story been with the practice growth and where you are? How'd you get to where you are now?
Right. So, I mean, I started out in solo practice. Well, I started out working for another doctor in a lens crafter setting, just as an employee. That was my first job out of school. And that's where, the old saying, you cut your teeth, got your reps in, and started to figure out how to see patients efficiently and how to get out of that school mindset. The one patient every hour and a half is not going to pay the bills for most people. So it is a situation where I learned how to take care of patients. But even in that setting, if you took the time, you got the patients cared for, the owner of the business wanted to keep me on for another 2-3 years because she was seeing the benefits of those patients being happy, coming back, and building her empire for her. And so then I moved back to Iowa, and that's where I actually moved back to my hometown, little town, rural Iowa, little town called Eagle Grove, and took over my hometown practice. And it was great. I mean, it is, I was there for 8 years, spent time taking care of people that I knew growing up, people that I'd seen from when I was a little kid, my former teachers, all these people that I knew. And that was a great business. It really was. It was a good practice. It was a medical oriented practice, like a lot of rural optometry offices can be and should be, because there are patients of older age that need that care and can't drive 30-40 minutes to seek further care elsewhere. So they can get good primary eye care right there in their hometown. And that was a good practice. It was fun being there, but really the size of the town is why we moved more than anything else. So when
You like small
we had,
towns?
I do. I'm a small town boy at heart. Let's be honest. And for somebody to look at Des Moines, Iowa, and say, okay, that's still a pretty small town. Let's be honest, compared to some of the places that people practice. But so when it came down to it, the decision was really based on the opportunities for the kids. Our children. We wanted to make sure that they had a few more opportunities from an education standpoint. So it was time to move on. And when we did that, I joined a practice that had one location. But to facilitate the growth of another doctor entering the practice, we opened one cold and we bought another practice all within, a month of each other. And that growth was exponential and painful, right? Because sometimes you go into a transaction like that and you don't have any idea what that's going to entail when you take on two more full-time practices, one that's cold, one that's running, but maybe at a lower threshold than you're used to. So I joined two other doctors in that practice, and through various interactions over the next 8 years again, decided it was time to end that association and that partnership, and move on. So in that process, I kept two of those locations, one that had been the cold start and one that had been the smaller practice that we purchased. And the other practice stayed solo on its own. So through all those experiences, buying practices, selling practices, learning trial by fire, really, that's what brought me to the brokerage side too. Because, we all talk about how very little business experience we get in school. We get even less about the transition and the purchasing practices that come along with trying to make those transactions happen. So I felt that my experiences with that made it a good place for me to help other docs avoid some of those pitfalls.
Yeah. And that's interesting because I feel like I do want to touch on that. We'll circle back to that piece
Sure.
of making the jump to a completely different business in practice consulting, right?
Right.
It's a little bit different ball game, but
Yeah.
so let's touch on that example you said. You bought one practice cold, or started cold, bought another one within the month,
Mhm.
exponential growth. What's something you ran into you didn't expect, right? Because you were probably thinking one thing, but reality was another thing. What was the one thing that you were like, oh wow, did not see this?
Right. And I think the thing that was most surprising was the logistics of the staffing piece, and not necessarily the staffing piece alone, but keeping all those pieces moving together and making sure that all those moving parts are moving in the same direction. And that was the biggest challenge throughout the whole process was, you're going to incorporate this practice that has been doing it this way for 20 years prior to the purchase. You're going to have another practice that is completely cold and may not see any patients the first 3 weeks that they're open. The schedule is completely bare. So trying to balance all those pieces and have the same overwhelming goal and feel, branding. You want to make sure that all those locations are getting the same amount of attention. They're getting the same amount of care as an owner and as a doctor. Those two pieces, balancing that all out, it was a lot. And it really was more than I was anticipating at the time. And again, those are one of those things that you just learn as you go, what works and what doesn't. And that's the biggest piece that anybody that I know you had Dr. Aaron Neufeld on in another episode, and he does a lot of acquisitions. I mean, the guy moves fast. And so he has that down pat, but not everybody gets the opportunity to buy multiple practices in their career, sell multiple practices in their career. So the biggest advice I can give someone is just one piece at a time. Get that up to speed to where you feel like it matches what you're looking for, and then move to the next piece or move to grow a little bit more. But it doesn't have to all be at once.
Yeah, I guess with that, curious on when you say matches, what do you mean by that? Like, I have an idea what you mean by that, but I want to hear it from your words. Like, what do you mean by matches? What you need or what?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody wants to establish a brand. They want to establish a continuity from practice to practice or location to location. And I think that's always important, for several reasons. One, you want the patient to walk into every location and feel like they're in the same practice. They want to feel like every practice or every location matches your vibe, your branding, what you want them to feel when they walk into your practice. You want to feel that in all the locations if you can. If they already have a setup that you're familiar with, if you're buying or acquiring a practice that already focuses on medical and that's what you want to do, perfect. Then, you've got a good match. If you're trying to come in and make a big overhaul with a practice, that's going to be a tough transition for everybody, the patients, the staff. It just makes it that rocky start to a process that's already difficult. It really is. And it doesn't have to be if you can find something that matches your needs.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It was interesting because I was looking at some recent business theory, right? Harvard Business Review, and one of the things I read, I forgot where I read it, but it was like when you expand, you kind of have to be good at what you're expanding into,
Mhm.
and so it's really interesting because I've seen this only once or twice where someone has like let's say a boutique office and then you
Mhm.
go into a Medicaid office.
Yeah.
Very different models, right? And so is that kind of what you're saying? It's not only the brand, the feel, but how you actually practice.
Right. Yeah. The modality of practice, how you plan to take care of those patients should match everywhere. It just makes it that much easier on you as a provider too. Right. I mean, if you're taking care of glaucoma patients in one practice, but you're
Yeah.
just spinning dials in the other one, it's not a mesh. It doesn't, can you do it? Absolutely. We're versatile professionals. We can practice at a lot of different levels, but it's just so much easier if you can have that continuity from location to location.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you a question because I'm really curious about this
Mhm.
because you talk to a lot of practice with your practice management company.
Yep.
And this is going to be a weird question. I'll give you a second to think about it if you need to. What do you see the most successful practices not to do? Like, what do they avoid doing that is common knowledge or common wisdom? What's something that you're like, oh, they don't do this, but people talk about doing this, but no one, none of the successful people do that. Or maybe it's like something that you would think is just, oh, this makes sense to do, but they don't do it. Something that's might be uncommon that people may not be aware of things not to do.
There's a big disconnect when it comes to especially big practices that are already successful. They do these things well. The worst phrase on the planet, as far as I'm concerned, is we've always done it this way. Being unwilling to change, being unwilling to look at other ways to do these things, or even to do something completely out of your comfort zone because it's always worked this way. So I don't know if it's necessarily one specific item, but I do know that in optometry, we're very, very caught in a rut when it comes to managed care plans and things like that. And the idea of, dropping something or not participating in some of those managed care plans is scary. It's very frightening. And because there's just enough there to keep you on the hook and to keep you moving in a direction. But being able to jump off of cliffs and being able to take risks is a huge, huge part of being successful and growing a practice. And so doing the scary things, that's important. That's a valuable piece to be able to look at it and say, I want to do something that I don't know that it's right, but I know that it's a good idea. And being able to take those steps is huge.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing is that some of the more successful practices don't take every vision care provider or medical provider out there.
Right.
Is that kind of what you're saying?
Right.
Or and that is a scary step. I can tell you that from personal experience. It's a scary step.
Yeah, no, the managed care thing, it is a frightening aspect of what we do. And I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever got early in my career was from a dentist, honestly. He was a patient, he came in and I think he'd had a red eye or an irritation or something. And I looked at it and it was nothing. There was nothing to it. It was just reassure the patient and send him out the door. And on the way out, he's like, well, I'll take care of my copay at the front. I'm like, I saw you for 5 minutes. I'm not going to worry about it. Small town, right? This is small town Iowa. This was my dentist growing up. And he looked at me square in the face, said, don't ever discount your services and your education. Period. End of sentence. And I mean, that stuck with me. And when you look at what we have to do when it comes to managed care plans, the biggest ask is that we just reduce our fees, right? We're discounting what we're educated to do and the services that we provide. And that's a huge piece of successful practice, understanding your value and what you bring to patient care. So being able to take that step and make that leap, as scary as it is still one of the best things you can do from a practice standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting you say that because I remember I forgot it was one of the consulting groups when we first started like 14 years ago, we brought them in and that stuck out to me too. They were like, never discount your services.
Mhm.
So it's definitely, I agree with that. Like, why
Yep.
would you do that? And
Yep.
I'll tell a quick story. I like this story a lot
Mhm.
because I think it illustrates the point is, and I don't know how true it is, but it gets the point across. So Henry Ford had a machine when he was building his cars and the machine broke down. He couldn't figure out for the life of him what was wrong with it. So he calls the engineer that's in charge of repairing this. They flies him out. At the time was, I think, around $5,000. So
Mhm.
it's like crazy amounts of money right now. That's over 100 years ago, right? So it's a lot of money to have someone come out there and do that. I guess he didn't fly him out there because it was
Right.
cars just coming in. But you get the point of the story.
Right,
He brought
right.
him out there, and then he looks at it and Henry Ford had been working on this problem for weeks. And he comes in there, 5 minutes, draws a circle, and says, "This is your problem. Just replace this fuse." Is
Mhm.
it okay? Like, why am I paying you $5,000 for drawing a circle? He's like, you didn't. You paid me $1 for the circle and $4,999 to know where to draw the circle.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
and so I think that's what doctors I hear that a lot. It's like, oh, it doesn't take that much of my time. But 8 years of schooling went into
Right.
that quick 5-second analysis because you
Right.
have so much integrated into that.
Right.
And I think that's such a huge. I think you're right. I think that gets devalued a lot.
Yep. And it's been a matter of attrition, right? It's not all at once. It wasn't that way when some of those managed care plans first came out. Pretty fair market value, or you're close to it. But to be able to stay with the standards of care, what the education has become over time, the services that we're able to provide now that we weren't able to provide even 20 years ago when I first came out of school. I mean, graduated in '05, and how the scope of practice continues to expand, the education levels continue to expand. It is really a changing landscape, but that's one of those things that hasn't changed. It hasn't moved the needle at all. And so it comes to a point where you do start to devalue yourself. And optometry as a profession has done that. That's what we have done as a collective is devalued those services by allowing them.
No, I think you're spot on with that. And so kind of shifting to some current day challenges that a lot of folks are facing. How do you deal with staff, especially in rural locations like where you are?
Yeah,
Are you dealing with that? If not, we want to
absolutely.
understand why you fixed it.
100%. And it's true. I get the opportunity to talk to clients across the country from a brokerage standpoint. It's true everywhere. It's a hiring and firing and retaining nightmare, isn't it? And when you find staff that are loyal, that are dependable, I've always said you can train the skills, you can't train the personality, and you can't train, dependability, reliability. And so it has gotten harder, because we've had people that they don't last 2 weeks. They come in and you start to show them some things. They're like, nope. and they just go, or they don't show up again. I mean, it's wild to see what has happened with that part of practice over time, because it was never a situation where people would just stop showing up. And that's a mentality shift that a lot of us business owners can't even fathom. It is like night and day to a business owner to think of not showing up for work, right? So when
Yeah.
we hire these people and they just don't come back, no call, no email, nothing, and they just stop showing up, it is wild.
Are there, is there anything that you're doing to deal with that? Like, I think you talked to a doctor that just said, we just overhire. We hire like crazy and, we just bring them in and
I,
either they
and
work or they
I
don't.
and I think you're right. I think there's a constant cycle of it to some degree, which is terrible. We hate that. We hate it. Again, it goes back to the continuity of care within our practices, and we want the patient to see the same face when they come in the door. We want them to interact and build those relationships with our staff just as much as they do with us. Especially from an optical standpoint, finding an optician that can connect to patients is a game changer. It's huge. If you can get an optician that can have the skill set and connect with patients, they're as good as gold. They really are from a retail standpoint, which is a big part of what we do. And so I think, from an optical standpoint, an optician standpoint, that is the biggest challenge, because when it comes to technicians and pre-testing, that's a skill set that you can train when there's turnover. But the opticianry, the optical acumen that it takes to be able to fit glasses well, to be able to do measurements, that's not an overnight process. So when you do find someone in that regard, you do everything you can to keep them within reason. And that's the one that's the hardest, I think, for most people. It is for us, I know.
Yeah. It's definitely tough. I can tell you everyone's feeling it. All our clients are feeling it with my business care team as well. So it's tough.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I think it feels like, yeah, I think it's like everything's unstable for a little bit. It seems like there's some stability coming back to that market now. Hopefully. So keep fingers crossed.
Yeah, that's right.
Uh, so what do you see most exciting about where the field is going, or you personally? What's exciting do you have in your near future? I'll let you decide which question to answer. You can answer either or both.
I'll do the big picture one first. I think the big thing that I see in the profession is, you know, there's a lot of great young doctors that are coming out of school that are going to keep this profession alive. And I'm excited about that. Now, it depends on which forums you read and where you go. If there's too many schools, or what the board passing rate is and things like that. But if you look at quality, quantity, there's always going to be good doctors coming out of school that are going to be there to take care of the profession and keep it moving forward. It's up to us in our middle age slot in that profession to make sure that transition happens the way it needs to. And it's not that, the older docs that we took over from fought battles for therapeutics and fought battles for expansion of licensure and our rights as professionals. And I think it's on us to make sure that the younger doctors understand that and understand what those battles look like, but then move into the next phase of, now what can we do as a profession to keep moving forward and to keep that excitement, because they're good, young, excited doctors. They have a lot of skill sets that we never thought were going to be part of our practice. And it's incorporating that into the next generation of docs and keeping the profession strong that way. So I am excited about that. I do have a lot of optimism when it comes to the next generation of docs that are out there taking over some of these practices that I'm helping with the transitions for. They're good, and it is exciting to see what they can bring to the table for us. For me personally, it is that transition, that handoff, my practice side of things. I enjoy seeing patients. Only thing I've ever wanted to do was be an optometrist. Like I said before, I can't remember ever thinking I was going to do anything else. I don't know what I would have done had I not become an optometrist. So the brokerage thing on the side, it's fun because I get to see those transactions and I get to see the young docs take over ownership and how exciting that process is. So it's kind of a transitional place for me in my career And I'm very excited to see that continue to move forward, because I do think there's a lot of good things out there for optometry if we continue to fight good battles and take care of our patients the way we need to.
Okay. And, um, you said something interesting there that I want to expand on. You said that you've always wanted to be an optometrist.
Yeah.
Like, when did that moment happen? Like, how'd you get that bug? When did it click for you? Tell me that story.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was in a optometry office since I was 2 years old. I have a accommodative esotropia, and I had surgery when I was about two. So I was in glasses with my optometrist every year since I was 2 years old. Um, and for whatever reason, that hit me like, this is a good thing. This is a good thing to do for people. My optometrist was at the time, the IOA, AOA president. He did all the things from a legislative standpoint, and he was great about, bringing along young people and making sure that they knew that optometry was a great profession to be a part of. And so I can't remember a time thinking I wanted to do anything else. So it is fun for me to be in this place where I can help young docs transition into that ownership mindset, because I think private practice is still a viable option for so many docs that, you know, yeah, there's employment opportunities for other aspects, but private practice is awesome. It really is. And we can keep it that way for a long time if we do a good job.
How would you, if a new grad came to you and say, "Hey doc, I got 150, $200,000 of debt. I
Mhm.
can't afford private practice. How would I want to, but I can't. What kind of advice, techniques, what would you give them as guidance? They want to get into private practice, but they're afraid of the debt, financials.
And it is a real argument, and it's a real concern, because again, even when I came out of school, the debt load wasn't nearly that big. But there's lots of ways that we can do this, and there's lots of financial institutions out there that can look at a practice and say, "This cash flows, this works, this is one that we can help you finance." So, yeah, you're taking on debt, but it's an asset. Your education, that's an asset. You're willing to pay the school loans, to be an optometrist. Owning a private practice is an asset. It really does appreciate depending on how hard you work. You know, you get out of it what you put in. Um, None of us, there is no practice that's on autopilot. Nobody can tell you, even if they tell you that, they're lying to you, because none of us can own a practice and not think about it. There has to be some work, some sweat equity that you put into it. So it's not easy, and it's not for everybody. But anybody that even thinks they want to be an owner, and they think they want to be into private practice, they've already got the first step in the right mindset, because it is a way to provide care, to be your own boss, it has a lot of value, because controlling that balance between work and home, private practice gives you the most freedom when it comes to that, and still generate a good living for yourself and for your family. And that's where private practice still has the edge, in my opinion. And I think most of the owners that you get a chance to talk to would say the same thing.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right about that. And I also like the fact you said that, you kind of hinted the fact there's no such thing as a passive business,
Right.
which I think is something else I've learned too that I didn't know when I was younger.
Yeah.
Um, so knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your younger self 4 days out of optometry school?
Ooh, that's a tough one, right? Um, I would probably say, um, have a 5-year goal strategy. You know, it doesn't have to be a plan. If you're 4 days out of optometry school and you're sitting there waiting for your licensure to come through, put together a 5-year goal map. Here's what I want to see in my first year of practice. Here's what I want to see in my first year of ownership. Um, have those plans in place before your license even comes through. And then if you're taking a job as an associate, if you're taking a job in a corporate setting, whatever modality you practice in, it doesn't have to change your goals. It just has to be lined up for you, so you know what you want from this profession and how you want to
Cool.
get there. And then the second piece of advice I would give any graduate, anybody that graduates from optometry school, be involved with your local association, be involved with the national association, because it's the closest thing you're going to have to a large voice. You know, we're a lot of little voices on our own, but the state association, for one, is near and dear to my heart, and the national association is a close second, because it does give you the opportunity to have a voice with your state, and thereby with the national association, with the AOA, to make sure that the profession does have a bigger voice as a collective. Uh, and there's varying opinions on that across the profession too, as to how that all plays out. But I know for a fact your state association can have huge impact in how you practice and in what you can do in your practice that can generate revenue. And it's different from state to state. So it is, if you want to have change occur in your state where you practice, be a part of the association, 100%.
I like that. That actually makes a lot of sense. I think just on a side note, another Harvard Business Review thing, Porter's 5 forces model for strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Quick, just snippet for folks listening. They talk about supplier power and versus customer power, right? And so when you look at it, the private practice optometrists are very fragmented. So the power as an industry to influence change is very minimal. And you're right, best places to do that seem to be the state associations or AOA nationally.
Absolutely.
To try to influence that. So that's great.
And if you're okay with it, I'm going to also say, not only from a big picture legislative standpoint is the state association good, but it's also a great place to meet like-minded individuals. Some of my very best friends on the planet happen to also be optometrists that I met through the state association. I mean, people that I could call up tomorrow and say, I need A, B, and C, and they're going to be at the front door an hour later saying, okay, let's get it done. I mean, that's the truth of what the association is outside of its intended purpose, right? Mm-hmm. Is where you're going to meet some of the best people you're going to ever meet. And those connections really can last you your whole career and beyond. I've got a text chain, 2 or 3 of them, where we met, we all came out of school together. We all showed up at a meeting together. We all ended up sitting together. And from that day on, if there's a question, if there's something, hey, I do this in my practice, what do you think of this? I'm thinking about doing this. What do you want? What's your input? And it doesn't always change your thought process, but it does give you 5 or 6 different perspectives, because we don't all practice the same. We don't all practice in the same area. We don't all practice in the same size communities, but it gives you a way to look at it in a really short amount of time. I don't have to go hire a consultant. I don't have to go onto ODs on finance or ODs on Facebook and pose a question that's going to maybe make me look silly. I don't know what it is, but it does give you that community, that local connection where you can say, what do you think of this? And that feedback is huge. And those guys, like I said, some of my best friends and people I can't practice without, even though we don't practice together.
That network is such a, I don't think there's been a person who didn't hint that their peers and work they have has helped them some way either.
Right.
So I think that's another really insightful comment there. So strength in numbers, right? With
Absolutely.
peers.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been, it's been fun. So Jeff, if people wanted to find you, where can they find you?
From a brokerage standpoint, if you're wanting to sell or buy a practice, they can go to practiceconsultants.com. That's my website. We've got all of our listings on there, and you can always contact me directly. My email is jeff@practiceconsultants.com. If you've got questions about that side of things, always happy to talk. I mean, my favorite topic is optometry. So this forum, this has been great for me. I enjoy it so much. And then of course, my practice website is just metro-eyecare.com. And that's just pretty standard stuff. I'm pretty easy to find, but the brokerage thing keeps me busy in the evenings, and the practice seeing patients keeps me busy during the day. And it's all optometry all the time.
Well, that's what, I mean, I don't think you'd have it any other way, since you've been wearing glasses this year too.
Right. Exactly.
Awesome. That's awesome. I love it. So thank you again, Dr. Jeff Neighbors, for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you, audience. If you learned something, laughed, or just enjoyed it in any way, please share the podcast. Please share the videos, subscribe. And thanks again, Dr. Jeff. This has been another exciting episode of Optometrists Building Empires. We'll see you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Optometrists Building Empires. Thanks for joining. For show notes and more, visit buildingempires.live. This show is proudly sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team was born out of staffing challenges my wife and I faced together, managing multiple optometry locations. We refined our approach at Classic Vision Care and now offer our expertise to others. If you're experiencing challenges with staffing and you'd like to set up a discovery call, we'd be happy to help you and connect you with the right resources. We'll see you next time.